All right, you're good, man.
All right, there we go. Okay, make sure everything's stable. I had to get my show notes pulled up too.
That's all right.
Yeah. Oh, I'd say I just got the notification right. I'll give it to the 45-second mark, and then I'll start going.
Okay.
Sure, everything looks good. Dude, I was like scrambling to get everything together to get going. I had to show. I had no choice, so that's okay. All right, somebody's in here now too. We can get going then. All right. Well, welcome to the Fresh Ice Hockey Podcast presented by Xenopucks. We are live as promised tonight. We are going to give you a preview of the 2024 Stanley Cup Final. We knew it was going to be the Florida Panthers during our last show. We now know on the other side of the rink will be the Edmonton Oilers, who took down the Dallas Stars in 6 games. So very intense series. Not a lot of physical play between the Stars and the Oilers, but very high-skilled matchups. You could really tell the Stars kind of ran out of gas. I think those first 2 rounds really took a lot out of them. And so they were kind of left in a tough spot. And then Tanev getting hurt killed them. And then Suter's play really fell back in the conference final. They weren't playing Nils Lundqvist. They weren't really playing Petrovic. So they were really riding 3 guys. And, of course, in Game 6, the Oilers didn't really play all that great of a game, but they get an absolute all-time highlight reel goal from Connor McDavid, and an outstanding 34-save performance from Stuart Skinner gets them propelled into the Stanley Cup Final, where, again, they will play the Florida Panthers. We kind of gauged your reaction for the Panthers on our Sunday show. As a fan of the Panthers, you look across the ice, you see the Oilers, you see some of the best players in the world on this team. As a fan, how do you feel now that you know this is the matchup?
Well, I'm not going to lie. This is kind of the matchup that I was hoping for in the grand scheme of things. Once the conference finals started, I was hoping for Florida Edmonton. I mean, looking back on things, especially the way the Panthers handled the Rangers, I think if there's any team that actually stands a chance against the Panthers, it's Edmonton. Like I said, I mentioned this on the last show. Obviously, Florida is on paper, I think, the better team. They're far deeper than Edmonton. They have a way better goalie. Not to discredit what Stuart Skinner has done, but the Oilers are a very fast team. And they're going to have to figure out how they're going to stop Connor McDavid, because if you can't do that, it's going to be a quick series. So I think it's a really good matchup. It's going to be a very exciting final. I'm just intrigued to see how it goes, because obviously I'm confident that the Panthers are going to win it, but I don't think it's going to be an easy task.
Yeah, I think you're right on. And again, we both listen to a lot of talking head shows. A lot of these shows are taking the Oilers in this series, and I don't think that the Oilers are anything to sneeze at all, especially if they can if what Stuart Skinner did in Game 6, if he can replicate that in 4 games in this series or more, the Oilers have a really good chance to win this. They're an incredibly deep team. The defense really has turned it on in the playoffs. Stuart Skinner has really come to life now, but this will also be his biggest test. Dallas was a good test, but they really ran out of gas. This is going to be the Oilers' biggest test. That top line, it's probably going to be top line versus top line. Barkov versus McDavid's line. I'm interested to see where things go as you go down the ladder. Second line of the Panthers going up against the second line of the Oilers. Obviously, they're going to be looking over at Leon Draisaitl on how they're going to try and contain him with his line and with Kane. And right now it's McLeod, which is kind of a weird setup, but if it works, it works. This is going to be a really awesome series. Purely as a hockey fan, this is going to be incredible. You see a team that made the final last year. They make it again this year. They're going up against a team who's got 2 of the best players in the world and is playing extremely well right now. This is probably pound for pound the best matchup we could have gotten, and I'm very glad that this is it. As a Minnesota fan, I was elated to see Dallas fall off and to see Ryan Suter run out of gas. As a hockey fan, of course, it stinks because you see, Suter's probably done in Dallas. Pavelski's going to retire. So as a hockey fan, it's like, Jesus Christ, that really sucks to see it end this way for them. But as a Minnesota fan, I'm like, oh, too bad. But
oh no. Anyway,
but nonetheless, the Stars had an incredible season. I'm sure with some tinkering, they will be back. And we'll get to them later on in the offseason, and we'll talk about them a little later in the show too. But this is a Stanley Cup Final preview show. we've seen everything now. We've had a week off to really kind of think about this. I know we both talked about this on Sunday. I have to imagine you're sticking with your pick for the winner.
I've been saying it since when did we do that episode? March, when I
March.
said the
It was right
Panthers are
after the
winning
trade deadline, I
It
think.
was, yes. And I was like, the Panthers are winning the cup this year. I'm standing by that. I will die on that hill. We've made it this far, and I say there's no way the Panthers go back-to-back Stanley Cup finals and lose both of them. I just don't see it happening.
It's only happened twice in NHL history. The Blues, their first 3 years in the league, lost all 3 Stanley Cup finals. That was kind of skewed because they were in the expansion division and they were the best team by a mile in that division, so they always made the final. But then they got killed by the Bruins and the Habs a couple times. So it's kind of unfair to do that. And the other time, of course, was the Bruins who lost. I believe it was. I was in this. I just saw the stat the other day. I want to say it was 74 and 75. I think they lost something like that, or 73 and 74, something like that. And
was that when Grapes was the coach?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And so I think those were Don Cherry's teams. And so this doesn't happen often. The Panthers match up really well. Bob's playing great. Their lines are going. Their power play's going. The penalty kills going. I did see a thing today that said it's impressive that the Panthers made the Stanley Cup final with Aaron Ekblad playing 20 minutes a night, but I didn't think that was a very nice comment. But I don't listen. I don't think his game's been terrible. I know this was not his best season overall, but he's still a really good defender. Look, you don't accidentally get into a top 6 defensive role on a Stanley Cup caliber team. So
correct.
That's just the bottom line. But I'm with you on this. I've listened to a lot of the talking heads this week say that, boy, the Oilers are really going right now. And I agree they are. And I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see them win this series. But it's really hard to pick against the Panthers, man. The Panthers, while the Oilers, yes, they've absolutely turned it on, especially the last few weeks. The Panthers have been doing this the entire season, and they don't seem to show any signs of cracking or any weaknesses. From all accounts, the players say they're significantly healthier than last year. And so for me, it's hard to pick against the Panthers. While I was going to say Panthers in 6, and I originally thought so, I'm going to say Panthers in 7 because I do think the Oilers can keep up this level of play. Unfortunately, in their case, I don't think it'll be enough to push them past Florida. But I think regardless, we are in for just an incredible series.
I don't disagree that we're in for an incredible series. I do disagree with the amount of games it's going to take. I don't doubt for 1 second that that the Oilers can keep up with Florida. But at the end of the day, I don't think it matters, and I say Panthers in 5. I know it's pretty bold, but
yeah, that's really bold. That's rough. I think that's our tough look of the week is Andrew's Stanley Cup pick.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll wait to call it a tough look and see if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah, Panthers in 3 or Oilers in 3.
Okay. I mean, I should point out I won't be surprised if this series goes 7 games at all.
No, and I think there is some justification in your pick. Look, if Stuart Skinner falls off, that could spell disaster very quickly for them. I just don't see it happening, especially now that both teams have had a chance to rest. It's really hard to see either of these teams struggling to win more than a game.
See, I'm going to counter that, though, and say that, Stuart Skinner was getting hot at the right time. And now that they've had that time to rest, I think it's going to negatively impact his performance. That's just what I think.
We'll see. I'm sure he didn't mind a few days off after having to be the entire defense on Sunday night. So,
and that's just the thing, though, too. If Edmonton can't keep their defense up, Florida's going to tear them apart. And I mean, Florida's a deep team on every single line. You want to look at like the third line of Lundell, Luosterainen, and Tarasenko. They have absolutely established themselves as a dominant line, not just on the Panthers, but in the NHL. They are a dominant.
Nope, I lost Andrew there for a second. We'll wait for him to come back because, that's what you do in a live show. I think this is actually the first time we've had issues during a live show. So we'll just write out the
third line.
Oh, we lost you for a sec.
That's all right. What was the last thing you heard me say?
I don't even remember. So that's okay. But you're talking about the third line and how effective they've been.
They have, and they were phenomenal in the Rangers series. I mean, they've been great throughout the whole playoffs and the second half of the season, especially. I think Tarasenko's been an absolutely perfect fit for the team. He hasn't done anything superstar quality for them, but he's been an an excellent presence for them on the ice. I think he's a great third line player. He's still producing for them, so I think he's a great fit. I think the third line is nothing to mess with. And again, the Panthers are the deeper team here. It's just a matter of the Edmonton is a faster team, in my opinion. And on top of that, can they stop Connor McDavid? Those are going to be the two biggest Panthers challenges. The biggest thing for the Oilers is how does Stuart Skinner hold up?
And so that's what I want to get into now. So I have concerns for, as good as they both are, I do have concerns for both of these teams that I think if either of them, whichever one of them loses the series, I can kind of see how they'd get there. For the Oilers, the big thing, of course, is Stuart Skinner's play. My other concern is the defense. The defense has been really great. Ekholm and Bouchard have been fantastic for them. I've liked Broberg's play since he's come in as well. I think Nurse has stepped up a little bit where he was much maligned, especially the first couple rounds of the playoffs. So I think they can go toe-to-toe with the Panthers defense, and as long as they can keep up that level of play. But I think if we're at the end of the series and the Oilers are the losers here, I think that's what we'll be talking about was their downfall. Look, the penalty kill was perfect in the conference final. It's been ridiculous the entire playoffs for them. Their power play is scoring at a historic rate in the playoffs. There's a lot going their way that if they can get if everybody stays hot, they're going to be good. But you gotta hope Skinner stays good. You gotta hope the defense stays good. On the other side of the ice, I look at Florida, and now my concerns for them. My biggest concern for Florida, I really don't have too many because they're so well put together. They're very well coached. They stick to their systems. They stick to what works. My biggest concern for Florida is the penalty trouble. We know they have a couple of guys who can get pretty emotional on the team. They got Lomberg, they got Kachuk, they got Bennett. They have guys who can be absolute scrappers. My biggest concern for them is staying out of penalty trouble with how good the Oilers' power play has been. I think if the Panthers end up losing this series, I think we'll look back and it'll likely be because they got into penalty trouble. I think Paul Maurice has done an excellent job keeping them under control so they don't get into penalty trouble. I thought they played extremely well against the Rangers, and of course it's landed them a spot in the final. So I think if the Panthers get into penalty trouble, I think that could lead to their downfall, but I do think ultimately they are the team that wins this series.
I don't disagree with you, and I want to say too, to your point about Paul Maurice, I harped on it a little bit on the last episode about how wrong I was when they signed him, but Paul Maurice is literally the heart and soul of this team. Aside from what happens on the ice, you could have all these same lines on the ice. This isn't the same team without Paul Maurice. I don't care what anybody says. He's been the best thing that's happened to this team aside from the lineup we have. He's just such a great coach, and he truly, truly cares about his players and the product he puts out on the ice. And credit to Bill Zito as well, who has done a phenomenal job of building this team. I'm so overcome with emotion about this just because I'm so excited for it. And it just feels like this is the year. As you mentioned earlier, the team is infinitely more healthy than they were last year. The players have said it. We've said it. Everybody knows it. And that's what makes them so lethal. I really, really think, I'm not discrediting what the Oilers have done, but I think they've met their match against Florida.
Real quick, I just want to say we got a comment on YouTube from our very, very close friend Angel saying, "What's up, boys?" So just a quick shout out to Angel. We love you, buddy. Thanks for tuning in. Now I do want to take a step aside here because obviously, now we've talked about the final, and of course we'll talk about it on the shows to come. I do want to mention real quick a quick congratulations to the Saginaw Spirit of the OHL. They're the winners of the Memorial Cup. They defeated the London Knights. Really, really good Memorial Cup. Saginaw was the host team, ends up defeating London. And again, that London team was loaded too. So very, very cool little Memorial Cup matchup there. Two teams pretty close in proximity. And yeah, I like it too. OHL teams in the Memorial Cup. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to watch. I didn't get to catch the games, but I watched what do they call those? The condensed highlights where it's like an 11-minute highlight pack or 8-minute highlight pack, whatever the hell they are. So that's how I got my fix of that. I just wasn't able to get the games on. So, but again, congratulations to Saginaw. Very cool for a host city to win. And upcoming NHL, I think he's going to go top 10 in the draft. T.J. Ginla, son of NHL legend Jerome Ginla, Memorial Cup winner now. So good on him.
I'll be shocked if he doesn't go top 10.
Yeah, I think he will. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go in the top 5.
And I'm not basing that off of who his father is either. I'm basing that solely off of his talent.
Yeah, no, he's a
So
good player. So it'll be fun. I really can't wait to see what the Sharks do with Celebrini and Will Smith. I really hope Celebrini does not go back to school. I don't think he will, but you never know. I mean, the Sharks still have a lot they have to do to get that team built up. And so I'll be interested to see what they do, but I would really like to see him and Will Smith get a crack at listen, it can't get much worse for the Sharks than it did last season. I think you put out those two budding stars, I think you'll get asses in seats. And if you can bring in some good grizzled veterans there, I think you can, begin the start of the next chapter, start to build something good. It's not going to hurt to get these guys experience. If their bodies are ready for it, put them in the lineup and see what you got, man. You might as well. I mean, the Blackhawks did it with Bedard, and it worked wonderfully for them. I know their season was terrible, but in general, it was great for Bedard. He had a lot of highlight reel plays this season. He learned a lot from guys like Nick Foligno, and so I think it's important. I think in the future we'll look probably 5 years from now and say how important it was that the Hawks got Bedard on the ice right away with the big club. First line minutes, they just threw him to the wolves. I think the Sharks need to do that with Smith and Celebrini as well, as just throw them out there, see what you can do. Surround them with guys who have been around a while that can teach them how to be pros, as the saying goes. And I think, I think this draft class is going to be a really exciting one.
I agree. I think, like you said, San Jose's got a shit ton of work to do. I mean, I don't want to sit here and say it's a poverty franchise, but
no, not at all. Listen. I know they've never won a championship, but there were a ton of good seasons in San Jose, so I think that'd be a stretch to call them one.
No, and I absolutely agree with you. I mean, they're just in a rough patch right now, but there's a lot of things that need to fall into place. So I mean, barring some absolute terrible decision making, we know they're going to take Celebrini. To your point earlier, I almost expect him to go back to school. And there's nothing wrong with that unless you're the San Jose Sharks, hoping he doesn't. But I think realistically, that's probably what happens, at least for maybe a year or two.
I would be shocked if it's more than I would be stunned, blown away if it's more than a year. The reality is he's got family in the Bay Area. His father works for the Golden State Warriors. He's got a lot of connections over there. I think between that and he's going to sign the biggest rookie contract he can sign. I think between the money and the fact he's got family over there, I would be shocked to see him go back to school. But if he does, A, I don't blame him, but B, there's not a chance in hell he stays more than another year there.
Well, I mean,
especially with his buddy Smith going to be up with the Sharks anyways, I just think there's no chance.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be right at home either way. So, yeah. We'll see what happens. That's not something I want to speculate too much on because we just don't know, and we won't know till it happens.
So now, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm just interested to see where you're going.
I was going to say, so moving along, before we get to the Stars, because that's kind of how I want to end the show as well. I want to talk about the Stars, where they go from here, because there's going to be some change over there. A couple of things I want to get to. First thing, I just saw this morning, and I shared it with you in our group chat. The Los Angeles Kings and the Anaheim Ducks have confirmed they are changing their logos. They're both going to go back to their logos from the 90s. So for the Kings, it's the italicized font that says Los Angeles Kings with the black and white. They're going to redo their jerseys. The crown inside of that old retro logo is going to be, I guess, redesigned as well. The Ducks, after years and years, pretty much since they changed from it, the fans finally get what they want. The Ducks are switching back to the all-time famous Mighty Ducks logo. They're going to mix the old logo with the new colors. So it'll be the Mighty Ducks logo, but with the orange and black that the Ducks currently sport on their uniforms. So new uniforms and new logos coming for the Kings and the Ducks. And so it's going to be pretty cool. I'm a big fan of the Mighty Ducks design. I have the orange alternate jersey with the Mighty Ducks logo on it. Big fan of that look. So yeah, I can't wait to see how those jerseys look at the draft. And a couple of weeks, we'll be getting our first look at the Fanatics jerseys at the draft. So we'll see how it turns out. We'll just have to see. Some teams are also expecting some redesigns, but those are the only two that I know of so far. Just wanted to talk about that. I am stoked that those two teams are bringing their retro looks back. Those are some of the best logos in sports.
Definitely some of the most iconic for sure.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, I'm surprised it took Anaheim this long to go back to the Mighty Ducks.
They should have never changed. And I know
Yeah.
after Disney sold the team, they wanted their own identity. Dude, the webbed foot logo or whatever that's supposed to be shaped like the D for Ducks, I've never particularly been a fan of. It looked okay. I never was a fan. The jersey style was really uninspiring. The one that used to say Anaheim Ducks across the crest, and then the current one they had with the stripes going vertically down the side. I just hated that whole look. So very excited to see them bring back some great looks. And for the Kings too, the Gretzky era logo and jerseys will be sick. So we got a couple of questions. Go ahead.
Oh, we do. The one thing I wanted to say was I'm really, and I'm sure you're in the same boat as me, I'm really hoping for a Columbus rebrand.
From what I saw from Aesthetics, it does not look like they're going to get one yet. Because you have to remember, Fanatics asked a lot of they asked the NHL franchises to not do any rebranding. There were some teams like LA, I think St. Louis is one, and Anaheim that were starting to do rebrands already, so they got grandfathered in. But my understanding is Columbus, while it's not out of the realm of possibility, it doesn't look like they're doing one yet.
No. Either way,
but they are keeping the third jersey. They are bringing they're bringing the cannon back next year.
That needs to be the primary, and I know there's tons of people out there who agree with us. That needs to be the primary. Get on it, Columbus. So we'll see we'll see what happens with that. But anyway,
all right, let's get to these questions, and then we'll get to our sponsors, and then we'll get to the stars. First question is from our friend Angel. It's an AHL question. It says, if the Monsters and Admirals win their next home game, they both play tomorrow night at home, do you guys think they have a chance of tying the series, or will the other teams close at home?
I'll go first. I'll speak on the Monsters. I'll let you speak on the Admirals. I think that's fair since those are our respective teams. Yeah. I think for the Monsters, first of all, these are, I mean, it's win or go home, so you don't have a damn choice here. My thing is, I think if the Monsters can win tomorrow, they stand a chance going back to Hershey, because overall they didn't play horrible in Hershey. I mean, they brought both
the first two games are overtime.
I would say they brought it to overtime. Now, it's worth mentioning they tied those up late with the goalie pulled. Both times it was David Juracek. But regardless, they didn't play bad. I think if they pull out a win tomorrow night, they got a good chance going back to Hershey. But I'm telling you, watching Hershey play, they're on a different level than everybody else. Everything just clicks on that team. So it really could go either way. I'm interested to see. As far as the Admirals go, I'll let you touch on that.
Well, for the Admirals, so a couple things. Me and some friends and my wife went to Game 3 of the Admirals and Firebirds the other night. From what I can see in this series so far, Coachella Valley's done a really good job staying out of the box, and in the playoffs, that's just of the utmost importance. They've been, for the most part, really disciplined. The Admirals, for the life of them, on Monday night or Tuesday night? Sorry, was Game 3. They had probably, I lost count after 5, but they had 5 shots that got past Chris Drieger, but skittered just to the outside of the goalpost and slid through the crease and out instead of going in the net. They've been getting their chances. They come out last night and went 7-2. They absolutely poured on. For the Admirals, if they can win tomorrow, I think they have a really good chance to go into Coachella Valley and force a Game 7. I don't know if they'll have enough in the tank to win this series, but I think a win tomorrow really puts them in a good spot. They'll have all the momentum going into going back to Coachella Valley. I don't think they've played a horrible. They had a really bad start on Tuesday night. They gave up a goal 30 seconds into the game and just really never recovered from that. They really couldn't get their feet going. They were a mess in their own end. And then they had some good looks after a while, but it just wasn't enough. Obviously, like I said, last night they poured it on. There was no issues at all. So I think there's something there for the Admirals to make a comeback, but I think ultimately, I think it's going to come up short no matter what they do.
Yeah, I'm honestly at this point, I just think we're going to see a rematch of last year's Calder
and that's
Cup.
Okay. Listen, the Firebirds and Bears are just, like you said, they're just playing on another tier. Yeah, they look like they both look unstoppable. That series would be like what we have in the NHL with the Oilers and the Panthers. Those are two of the best teams, and they're ready to just absolutely kill each other.
Well, and one thing I want to mention too, first thing I want to say is if you're a Monsters fan or an Admirals fan, there's nothing to be ashamed of. You made it to the conference final. That is a deep playoff run. That's still something to be proud of. On the Monsters side of things, and I'm just speaking for myself and my fellow Monsters fans, you have nothing to be ashamed of because this team was absolute garbage last year, last in the division. They hadn't made the playoffs in 5 years. So to come back from all of that after a simple rebrand in the offseason and to come back and have a season like they've had, there's nothing to be ashamed of as a Monsters fan. I mean, it's a great fan base. I'm speaking from experience. It's loud in that arena all the time, and I know it gets loud in Milwaukee too because I've been to games there. They're two solid teams with two great fan bases. So there's nothing to be ashamed of here. You hate hearing the expression, there's always next year. But that's really the case. You saw what you did this year. For the Admirals, this is back-to-back trips to the conference final. Nothing to be upset about here, man. Yeah, is it disappointing in the long run? Absolutely. But there's nothing you should be mad at.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to say that, look, for the Admirals, it's back-to-back conference finals against the same exact team. I know for Admirals fans, it's very frustrating, but the reality is Coachella Valley was really well built. They had a lot of great Seattle prospects on the team. Dan Bilesma has done an excellent job growing those players. He's got that team. They've got it dialed in. And so I don't think there's any shame in losing to them. As frustrating as it is, I mean, you want to win every game. You want to win every year. I get it. And so losing this series will not feel great, but it's nothing to be upset. It's nothing to be or I don't want to say frustrated or upset with, because you would be as a fan, but you have to understand that that's just the sobering reality of this game is one team's going to win, one team's going to lose. And I think for the Admirals, for the second year in a row, they're just running into a team with a killer goalie, and that's just playing really well. So,
yeah, like you said, it's sometimes you just meet your match and there's nothing you can do about it.
So I think to answer Angel's question, I think we'll both say the same thing, is that I think regardless of how it goes down the rest of the way, I think there's a good chance these other teams are closing it out at home.
Absolutely. I think we see a rematch of last year's Cup final. It is what it is. It's been a hell of a run this year. So, again, nothing to be upset about. I'll go ahead and read this next question because it appears as though it's from my wife. So, what do you guys think of the Utah Hockey Club's potential team names? And
I have them pulled up if you want me to read them.
Yeah, you can read them off. And then there's a second comment on here from Don Fournier. And it ties right in with this. So go ahead and read the team names first.
Yes, I just looked before I switched to my tab that's got it open. I looked at Don's comment and made me laugh. Let's see. The finalist names are the Utah Blizzard, the Utah Mammoth, the Utah Outlaws, the Utah Venom, the Utah Yeti, and the Utah Hockey Club, or Utah HC.
To which Don replied, I voted for Hockey Club because I think it's hilarious, which I don't disagree. But if that ends up being the name, I'm gonna blow a gasket.
I will too. And listen, there's nothing wrong really with that name, Utah HC. It's very popular with soccer or football in other parts of the world. A lot of clubs go by FC for football club, or a lot of there are some MLS teams, I believe, that are SC. So I get the origin of that name, but for a hockey club, and even some European hockey leagues have their names as HC, like famously Jaromir Jagr's team, HC Kladno. It's popular there. We don't really see that in North American sports too much, though, so that's kind of why it stands out. I personally like the name Outlaws the most, but I think Yeti is going to be the one that ends up winning.
I think Yeti's going to be the one that ends up winning. That's personally my favorite. However, Outlaws is a close second. The one that just I don't like
Venom.
at all, Venom, and then right behind that is the Mammoth, or the Mammoths, whatever they're doing.
It's Mammoth. That's the other thing. I don't like the lack of plurals. A lot of people seem to be divided on that, and maybe that's why I'm leaning towards Outlaws instead of Yeti, because I wish it were Yetis. But
that's what. That's what I'm saying. That's the plural form of that word anyway, so it should be Yetis. I think.
Yeah, unless they're referring to one Yeti. Which,
well, I say, are you a team of one Yeti?
Maybe they are. Maybe they represent one Yeti. But nonetheless, look, overall, other than Venom, I really do not like Venom. I think you hit that right on. I think any of the other 5 names would be good. I think Utah HC would be a little odd, but I think it would grow on people. I mean, really, if you look around at some of the team names, honestly, look at Utah's other sports team, the Jazz.
Well, there's a story behind that, though, that makes sense when you hear it. Like, it's because they were from New Orleans.
Yeah, I know.
So they just.
But so the thing that kills me is the owner of this Utah hockey team, it owns the Jazz. You do this whole drawn out thing to keep your hockey team, or to name your hockey team, and you cannot be bothered, cannot give the time of day. No, I'm talking about his hockey team. He goes through
Oh.
all this process to name his hockey team, but he will not give the time of day to renaming his fucking basketball team. That does not make any sense to me. So I just thought, I'm like, man, that's great. But you know what? I do like the way they're doing this. I'm not crazy about the fact that they're going to play this season without an actual name, but it is what it is.
Well,
We'll get through it. Listen, we got
PWHL did it.
PWHL did it. We got, as football fans, got through a couple of years of the Washington football team. So,
sorry. Forgot about
that. Yeah. I mean, there's been worse ones out there. I think we'll all get over this. And honestly, once they pick a team name, I'm sure the jersey design they come up with will be sick. So, thanks, Kristen, for the question there. Overall, though, I do like these names except for Venom. I think that's kind of an one. But
yeah,
the original pool they had
sense.
the original pool they had to pick from was like over 20 or it was like 20 names, and there were some really bad ones on there. Of the names on that list, these were probably the ones that I would have liked out of that bunch anyway. So yeah, I'd be interested to see what they come up with, but also interested to see what jerseys they're going to use for this one season. So
I'm really excited to just see how everything's going to go with that team. I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm obviously not going to be a Utah fan, but I think if you're just a general hockey fan, there's no reason you're not excited for that, unless you're a Coyotes fan and you're salty.
Well, and I don't want to twist the knife, but look, I'm extremely excited to not have to talk about the Arizona Coyotes anymore. It was exhausting. You wanted it to work for the fans. But now that they've moved on and everything, I'm glad we don't have to deal with it. Maybe one day they'll come back and it'll work. But for now, I'm glad we no longer have to talk about them. For the players from the Coyotes that are now on Utah, I think it'll be a very cool experience for them to have a chance again to play in a full-size building. And, of course, they're going to work on renovating that arena over the next few years to properly fit it for hockey. It's really not at all designed for it as it sits right now, but they've said they're going to spend the next few off seasons doing renovations to make the sidelines good for hockey and for basketball.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Again, everybody should be excited for this. Yeah. Sorry if you're a Coyotes fan, but if you're a former Coyotes player, this has got to be like a huge breath of fresh air. You get a fresh start in a new location, change of scenery. This is perfect for them. So I think sky's the limit. Not saying they're going to go out and win the cup their first year. I'm just saying I think this is the right move. And we talked about it halfway through the season even.
Look, they've got a motivated owner. They have some pretty good players there already, and they have a shit ton of draft capital that they can use to either bring in more great players or they can trade them out to bring in established stars already. They got a ton of money they can spend this offseason. I would not at all – I don't think they're going to go on and win the cup or anything crazy next year. I would not at all be surprised to see them in the playoffs next year, solely because before the Coyotes had their meltdown in the second half of this season, they were looking like they might be in the mix for the playoffs. So I think with some fine-tuning and bringing in some top talent, I don't see a reason at all why they can't be in the mix next year.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm excited about it. I don't want to jump to conclusions here, but I do think you're right, because Arizona was looking like, oh shit, these guys might actually be legitimate this year.
And I think the rumors of relocation really kind of knocked the wheels off the wagon too.
But see, for me, I feel like if you're having that kind of start to a season, you start hearing those rumors. That's got to be motivation for you to flip things around and keep shit going the way you're going right now. Stay hot, prove them wrong. Not always the case, but you know.
I think that's also easier said than done too.
I also want to shout out Don for his input on this, and also to his daughter Sam. They've been huge supporters of the show since day one, and you know, their family's a good friends of ours.
Yes.
And we appreciate you guys very much for following the show. It means a lot to us.
One of my favorite hockey memories, you and I in 2015 went to a Bruins versus Blackhawks game in Chicago. Yes. We bought standing room tickets because we were both broke as shit. That's all we could afford, because that was when the Hawks were still really good. In fact, they ended up winning the cup that year.
Yes.
We're in the furthest back standing room you could be in the highest level of United Center.
Oh, we were in the rafters.
Yeah, we any further, we were going to be on the roof. And by some miraculous chance, we ran into the Fournier family, and we stood with them and some other Bruins fans. The Bruins win that game 6-2, and it was just the greatest time ever. We had an absolute blast watching that game, and standing with them and enjoying the game with them made it even better, just to be with people that love the Bruins. And that was a hell of a first NHL game for us to go to.
Yeah, that was great. I think you and I hugged each other more during that game than we have our entire lives. So
Yeah.
that was not to say we don't like each other,
Yeah.
but
We haven't hugged more than 6 times though outside of hockey
yeah.
games.
Yeah. So that was a good time, and they're great people. So it's just awesome to have them follow the show.
Yes, very cool.
I don't know if you saw Chris's comment that says
Yeah,
Yarmir. Yeah. God.
Wonder who his favorite player is.
Oh boy.
That's a throwback, man. They're a great player too. I wish Yager was still playing these days, but you know, time marches on and Yager's in his 50s, so not exactly in the cards.
Yeah, it is what it is. I'm just waiting for him to get inducted into the Hall of Fame, but the guy needs to freaking hang up the damn skates. It's okay to admit you're old, man. Like, I mean, he looks great for his age. He's still out there playing. I'm sure he probably feels like hell physically. I mean, there's no way you're 50 plus years old going out playing this aggressive sport and
yeah, I'm sure he's putting on the ice packs.
Yeah.
He does take very good care of himself, though. So I
mean,
that goes a long way. So, all right, but before we move on here, because we're going to talk about Dallas now, let's talk about our sponsors real quick, and then we'll go into Dallas to close out this show.
All right. Well, I know Steve is tuning in at some point, so as always, Fresh Ice is brought to you guys by Xenopucks.
And I left mine on my dresser.
That is okay. I got mine. Xenopucks makes a top-tier, high-quality training puck that is designed for off-ice use on virtually any surface you can think of that's not ice, whether it's the floors in your house or concrete or asphalt. I've tried it on just about everything, and the slide and glide is it's so good, it's disgusting. I've heard of people trying this on grass and grass and dirt, and you know, you and I have talked about this. I don't know why you want to do that, but I guess if you want to, you can.
That's training on hard mode.
Yeah, there's just no reason for that. But this is perfect for those times where, you know, you want to practice your shot or your stick handling. Ice time is not always an option, whether it's because, you know, one, it's expensive, but number two, maybe you can't get a ride there, especially if, you know, you're a teenager still playing, you know, youth hockey. This is a perfect alternative because you could take it out in the driveway or the garage, and it looks and feels like a real hockey puck in the sense of its weight. It is the same weight, regulation 6 ounces, as an actual hockey puck. So it's got the real feel of a real hockey puck. Trust me, it flies off the crossbar like a real hockey puck. So please use caution when you're using this because it is not made of rubber at all. But they are very good to us. This is a phenomenal product. So if you have any interest in this, you're looking for a new off-ice alternative, you're tired of your green biscuit or whatever you're using, head over to xenopucks.com right now, pick yourself up a puck, check out their merchandise selection, and make sure you follow them on Instagram at Xenopucks, XENOPUCKS, Xenopucks. Brian.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to be practicing off ice, listen, sticks are expensive. Tape, after a while, can get expensive if you have to keep buying it. You should really protect your investment. Our friends at the Hockey Wraparound have kind of solved this issue for you. They offer their premier product, which is the Blade Protector. It's a vinyl protector, goes right over the blade of your stick. It's going to prevent you from hacking up the bottom of your stick, ruining your stick tape job, and it's going to allow you to still maintain that same level of quality when you're shooting or passing around. Check out their website, hockeywraparound.com. They have not only the Blade Protector, but of course they have things like tape and equipment drying racks. So go to their website, check out their stuff. Use the code FreshIcePod at checkout. It's going to get you 15% off of your order.
I love it. I love it a lot. And one thing I got to talk about real quick, they're not a sponsor for this show, but I love them, and that's the Warrior for Life Fund. If you saw the Bob Pizzini episode, the Mark Mowers episode, or the Andrew Alberts episode, you know what Warrior for Life is. But in case you don't, I'll just give you a brief rundown real quick. They are a military charity, and what they do is they help military veterans returning either from deployment or returning from the civilian world, helping them readjust, make that transition back into being stateside or back to being a civilian through the game of hockey, whether that's just getting them out on the ice for an hour at a time. I mean, sometimes that's just all it takes, because there's nothing worse than coming home from the military and feeling like you're alone in the world. And that is exactly what the Warrior for Life Fund tries to alleviate. And they even do it through adaptive sports like sled hockey. And if you're not familiar with sled hockey, look it up on YouTube because it's actually pretty cool. I mean, if you like hockey, there's no reason not to like sled hockey. But the Warrior for Life Fund, there's so many cool people involved in it. As you saw, the guests we had on the show are very involved with it. The Boston Bruins alumni is very involved with it. And they actually just recently partnered with the NHL as well. So I'm very excited to see where that takes them. I'm just so grateful for what they do for veterans. And if you want to help them out too and help the veterans in your community, you can head over to warriorforlifefund.org and make a donation today.
I love it. And again, love what they do. Obviously, I did not serve, but other than you, we have a ton of family that served as well. So always very appreciative of any organization that helps out veterans, because you guys risk it all for us. So it's nice to see you get what you're owed.
And if you ask just about any of us, we're not owed anything.
Well,
but
it's most of you are very humble or very modest. The reality is this country should do more for you guys than it does. So anytime an organization does that, I'm always very thankful.
It's all the biggest thing you can do is show someone that they're not alone. That's if you want to do something to help a veteran out, show them they're not alone. Don't just tell them they're not alone. Show them, help them. I mean, anybody can just walk up to a veteran and say thank you for your service. And while while that is a nice thing to say, I don't want to discredit people saying it, but at the same time, it can kind of be an empty thing to say. So whether or not you realize it, it's just everybody says it. So that's the biggest thing is these guys don't want to feel alone in the world, because it's a very scary place to be, is trapped in your own thoughts.
Fair enough. All right, let's move on here real quick. We have a couple comments. One from Kyle Lindo. It says, "How you doing?"
Oh boy, does it really?
Yeah, it sure does.
Of course it does. How you doing?
All right, now we're going to talk about Dallas, and we touched on this at the beginning, and Don left in the comments, Pavelski retiring is going to be a big loss for Dallas, and I absolutely agree. Look, there are very few players in the history of this game who are capable of doing what Joe Pavelski did in his career for the length of time that he did. 18 seasons in the NHL. He's one of the best American players ever. He really revolutionized the front of that kind of game, standing in front, chipping and rebounds. But what he really does the best is he is great at deflecting pucks. He's one of the first guys, I should say, that really kind of mastered starting in front of the net and then skating towards the shot as it's coming in to get the redirect. It's a really good way to get away from the defender, to give you as much room as you need to get your stick on the puck to redirect it past the goalie. He's without a doubt the best at it, and he was one of the very first to really perfect kind of that style of play. On top of that, he was a really good shooter. He wasn't fleet of foot by any means, but he was a very effective hockey player. He was the captain of Team USA. He was a silver medalist with the 2010 Olympic team. Made it to the Stanley Cup final with the Sharks, made it to the Stanley Cup final with the Stars, countless conference finals appearances. This is one of the best players ever, probably the best player to ever come out of the state of Wisconsin. You can make that argument for Phil Kessel as well. But an absolutely incredible hockey player. He was part of that legendary 2003 draft class where every guy in the first round of that draft played at least one game in the NHL, which is crazy. It's insane. One of the best draft classes ever, but 18 years in the league, thankfully was not really ever hindered by injuries. And so, Joe, from our show, we're going to wish you the best in retirement. But as a fan of an opposing team, boy, I'm glad that you don't have to kill my teams anymore, because, man, are you tough. So congrats to Joe on a great career, and it stings like hell that he didn't finish it with a cup. But no doubt in my mind he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
And I think, to the point of him not winning a cup, especially him being on that Sharks team, those good Sharks teams, like with Jumbo Joe, especially with Joe retiring and not getting a cup, I feel like Pavelski was kind of like the last hope. And it just sucks. And like you said, one of the best to ever come out of the state of Wisconsin. Fun fact, well, not fun, but it is a fact. I do have a picture back in like 2015. Me and a couple of my buddies took a trip up to the Green Bay area, and on our way back, we stopped at a brewery in Plover, Wisconsin, which is Joe Pavelski's hometown, and we took a picture in front of the sign they have for him there. just an unreal player, good guy on and off the ice. I think he's one of the more respected players around the NHL. It's gonna suck, and it's one thing that sucks about getting older as a hockey fan is seeing the players you grew up watching leave the league. It's like a part of you leaves with them too. So it's unfortunate, but I mean they can't play forever.
Yep. And you know what? The point of him being or finishing without a Stanley Cup, look, a lot of great players did not win the Stanley Cup. Jerome McGinley didn't. Joe Thornton didn't. Patrick Marleau didn't. I mean, Thornton and Marleau were on the Sharks too. Brent Burns is still in the league. He was on those great Sharks teams too. He's still playing, but he didn't win one. So, you know, a lot of great players don't win the Stanley Cup. It's an insanely hard trophy to win. I know when we're talking about the very best players of all time, that's a pretty big mark on the resume to win a Stanley Cup. But ultimately, he's still a great player. He's one of the best American players ever. I don't think he should hang his head at all. And again, I hope he enjoys his retirement. I hope it's healthy and he gets to spend a shitload of time with his family. But now also for our Wisconsin listeners, Joe Pavelski, avid fan of Culver's concrete mixers. So those of you in Wisconsin who love ice cream know exactly what I'm talking about. I forgot what NHL interview thing he did, but they were asking like the players their favorite foods. They asked him about ice cream and he said Culver's concrete mixers. He goes, "It's a Wisconsin thing." I'm like, my guy. So
it's a Wisconsin delicacy, man.
Yeah, big fan of his taste in ice cream. So moving on now, the Dallas Stars. They're without Joe Pavelski. They're probably, at least from what I heard, it looks like they're going to try and move on from Ryan Suter. Chris Tanev's deal is up as well. They got some holes in the roster to fill. Look, they have a lot going their way. They have Wyatt Johnston, Jason Robertson. They had Logan Stankoven come up this year and make a huge impact. Miro Heiskanen is one of the top 5 defenders in the league. I like the way Esa Lindell plays as well. Thomas Harley had a really good year. Jake Ottinger was incredible in net for them once he got going in the back half of the season. So there's a lot of great pieces there. Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin are still extremely effective players, even in reduced roles. It's insane how good they both still are. And so I think there's a lot there for the Stars. I don't think they have to do too much. I certainly think Pete DeBoer is a great coach, and so I don't think anything crazy is needed for this team. You just need to fill in the gaps. We talk about good teams having to retool to stay relevant, and I think that's what the Stars have to do here. I really think their biggest thing going into this offseason is bolstering the back end. I don't know if signing a 35-year-old Chris Tanev is the best way to go. There are going to be good options available. I think the popular one is probably Brett Pesce, who's done in Carolina, it seems like. So there are going to be options for the Stars, and I think that's got to be the sole focus for them moving forward. I think the forward core is more than effective, and you can always tinker with that a little bit easier. But their biggest downfall was having to play 3 defenders the entire game because Nils Lundqvist was useless. Alex Petrovic spent the last 5 years exclusively in the AHL, and Ryan Suter slowed down, and Chris Tanev was hurt. It just kind of exploded in their faces, and I really think I won't be surprised if the Stars are back in the conference final next year, but it's really going to be reliant on how well they can recover their losses. And losing Pavelski on the power play is going to be a huge one for them to try and make up for. But I still think the biggest thing they need to address is the back end, because you cannot play Miro Heiskanen and Thomas Harley for 30 plus minutes a night the entire season. Sure, no. You can lean on them in certain situations, but I think they really got to get those guys some help, because they can do it, most of it, but they just can't do it all if you expect to win a championship.
Yeah, and like you said, because I saw a couple people bitching online about Pete DeBoer, which makes no sense to me, because I think
he's a great coach. People say he's cursed or whatever. It's dumb. I know he hasn't won one yet, but neither has Paul Maurice, and look what he might be holding the cup up in a couple of weeks. So I don't like that adage of he hasn't won a championship. Well, nobody's won a title until they win their first. So I mean, dude, he's a good coach. You got to give him a chance.
Well, my thing too is when people are like, "Oh, he hasn't won a cup." Okay, I want to point something out real quick. Look at John Tortorella, and I know we both love Torts. He has 1 cup to his name, and he's one of the best coaches to ever coach in the game. So championships go a long way, and that's the ultimate goal. But just because somebody's lacking in that department doesn't mean they're a bad coach. So I think that's a shitty take for almost any situation.
Yeah. And it's funny, as soon as you said Tortorella's name, I was actually looking at the Jackets jersey behind you. The Jackets are an excellent example of that. Since Tortorella left, the franchise has been a fucking nightmare. So
yep.
which it looks like they're finally on the rebound. But after he left, Brad Larson comes in and is terrible. Then they bring in Mike Babcock, and he doesn't even make it to the season. Then Pascal Vincent comes in, and the team sucks. Obviously, they're still in the midst of making wholesale changes, and I'm sure we'll talk about that this summer. But the reality is that it blew up in their face. But back to the stars, I think it's very important when you have a good coach, you don't let it go. I know Pete DeBoer, they gave him a really short leash in Vegas, and to Vegas's credit, the guy they brought in after him won the Stanley Cup right away. So it's hard to argue against that, but I don't think DeBoer was the problem. I just think Vegas wanted Bruce Cassidy, and clearly it worked for them. How they even beat DeBoer on their way to the final. So look, I just don't like the idea that Pete DeBoer is not a good coach. There's a reason he's made all these deep runs with teams. You don't do that by accident. The Stanley Cup is just that hard to win.
Yeah, you can argue it's the hardest trophy in sports to win. You could argue that. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying you could argue it.
I'm saying it's true. I'm absolutely saying it's true.
And
every other league is Mickey Mouse. Don't at me.
Yeah, especially the NFL. Anyway, moving on.
Don in the comments says Pesci to the Bruins. That would be a great fit.
Yeah, too. That would be awesome.
That would be a really good fit. I think, listen, I don't think it's worked for Matt Grzelcyk there as they hoped. I certainly thought it, especially after the 2019 season. Listen, they lose the Cup final. I thought Grzelcyk had a great playoffs that year. I thought him and McAvoy were the clear number one, the top pairing defenseman moving forward. Obviously, McAvoy has butted into a superstar. I mean, he's an incredible defender. It really has kind of gone off the rails for Matt Grzelcyk. I think if you can find a way to ship him out, it seems like the Bruins are going to shop Linus Ullmark as well. If you move that out and you're able to bring a guy like Brett Pesci in, I think that's an incredible move for them. I still really want the Bruins to go after an elite center this summer. That's obviously much easier said than done. But yeah, I think Pesci to the Bruins, that would be a great fit. I think Pesci's a good fit on most teams, but most teams aren't in a spot where adding an elite defender is going to put them over the top. I think the Bruins are in a situation where if they add a guy like Pesci and they add an elite center, we could be talking about them making a deep run because of how good Jeremy Swayman is.
Right. And honestly, I want to say that, had the Bruins not run into the Panthers in the second round,
they might have made the final, man. The Rangers really kind of fell off too, and we didn't talk about it that much last show, but boy, did the Rangers really fall off the wagon in the conference final.
And it's still conflicting within me because I mean we've talked about it on here many times. I'm a Bruins and a Panthers fan. That happened completely by accident. It was never my intention in life. I was a Bruins fan first. I became a Panthers fan because I moved to Florida and we started going to Panthers games because they were so bad that the tickets were dirt cheap. So we would go all the time. And then we just started liking the Panthers and here we are now. So now I just root for two teams in the same division. And it's been giving me chest pain the last two seasons. So
it's good chest pain to have.
Yes, sir.
Real quick before we go, at the start of the playoffs, we mentioned that we would both buy jerseys of whatever team won the Stanley Cup, unless it was a jersey we already have. So in a couple weeks, one of the two of us will be buying a new jersey, and one of the two of us will not have to. So
yeah, I just realized that.
That's why I put up the Oilers jersey behind me. I mean, I figured, look, I don't have a Panthers jersey anyways. I might as well put up one of the teams. Got this really nice Connor McDavid jersey. Lucked out on that. I got it on clearance at Lids in Mall of America, of all places. It's authentic. I mean, it's fully stitched, everything. It's definitely Adidas, but because it's the old orange jersey style, it was clearance price. I had it for $60. So
dude, that's a fucking steal.
Yeah, the guy I at the counter when I bought it is like, "Is this right?" He goes, "This is authentic too." He looked for the Fanatics tag. He goes, "Holy crap, man, good find." I'm like, "Yeah, why do you think I'm buying it?" So
if the Panthers win, I don't have to buy a new jersey. And if the Oilers win, I've always wanted a McDavid jersey anyway. So, and the other thing I want to point out before we go, obviously I'm rooting for the Panthers with all that I am to win this Stanley Cup. However, if the Oilers come out on top and win the cup, I will be ecstatic to see Connor McDavid lift the cup.
I would say you yourself said it in a couple months ago. You think he deserves to be on the cup. And I'm with you. I want the Panthers to win from the Angel in the comments says the jersey's free if you just put it on and walk away.
Yeah, might be some repercussions.
Yeah, you might have to pay later on. But look, I want the Panthers to win because you and your wife are both huge Panthers fans, but I'm in the same boat as you. If the Oilers win, that solidifies McDavid and Draisaitl's legacies. I think it propels McDavid over the top. I think that makes him the best player of all time. To win the cup in this era where it's as hard as it's ever been to win a championship, we know he can score at will and nobody can stop him. If he wins a championship, it's very hard to say that he's not the best player of all time, in my opinion. I know Oilers fans would probably agree with that, even though they love Wayne just as much. I think they would probably say it's hard to argue against Connor given the era he plays in. But yeah, like I said at the top of the show, this is going to be a fantastic Stanley Cup final. I cannot wait to watch any of these games. I can't wait to get home from work tomorrow and put on the TV and watch what is probably going to be some of the best hockey we've ever seen in our lives.
I'm ecstatic, and I'll be watching the Stanley Cup final on my phone from the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland as my wife and I attend the Monsters game.
So some fan he is. So if you're wondering if his loyalty is to the Bruins or Panthers, there you go. Game 1 of the finals, and Andrew's at an AHL game.
Bro, I paid for my tickets.
I know. I'm just giving you shit. I gave you shit earlier. Might as well give you shit again. So
not only that, this could very well be their last home game they play this season. So not missing that.
Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, we will see you. We will not be on this Sunday. We may do some kind of post-game reaction after game 1 or 2. We'll see. But we will not do a regular podcast this coming Sunday. We will be back on, what is that, Father's Day, then. It'll be the 16th. So we'll be back on the 16th. On our next episode, our next full episode, we will start talking about the teams that missed the playoffs and where they're going to go from here. We're probably going to start in the West, but we haven't made any official decision on that. But, yeah, between covering the final and doing that, we got a lot on our plates coming up.
I don't know what time on the 16th we'll be back. If not the 16th, it'll be the 17th because I will be on my way home from Toronto on the 16th. Oh,
well, there you go. Well, have fun in Toronto then. Andrew, enjoy as a fan of the Panthers, enjoy the final. I hope your heart rate is able to stay down. And to all you hockey fans out there, if you're not a fan of the Panthers or the Oilers, enjoy what is going to surely going to be some incredible hockey. We will see you guys in about a week or so. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you to Xenopucks and Hockey Wraparound, as always, for sponsoring our show. Again, please visit warriorforlifefund.org and make a donation if you can. And we will see you guys in about 9 or 10 days.
Take care and comb your hair.